Now the tropics, Dorian has become a Category 1 hurricane. Winds now are up to 75 miles per hour with gusts up to 90 miles per hour. Now we knew that this storm would strengthen. We knew that the conditions were ripe for that to occur. And unfortunately, the storm is going to continue to strengthen. And we could see that impact also in the mainland U.S. by later this week and into early next week. So let's take a look at what we have now. Then I want to go over that track for you and let you know who's going to be in the path. And as of now, Puerto Rico, the eastern edge, along with the U.S. Virgin Islands, are taking the brunt of Dorian right now. We've got some hurricane warnings along the Virgin Islands and some tropical storm warnings going on around the Puerto Rico area. So it's a Category 1 storm. I'm going to get you over to my weather computer here. It is. There you go. All right. So you can see what's happening right now. This is Hurricane Dorian. 75 mile per hour winds, 90 mile per hour gusts. It's moving northwest at 13 miles per hour. That's a half decent speed for a hurricane. If it were moving at 5 miles an hour, we'd really be concerned. But 13 miles an hour, at least it's some movement there. So we've been watching along that area, and now it's just going up to the north, just making its slow trek up to the north, dumping some heavy rain around that area as well. Let's talk about what's going to be happening in the next few hours of Dorian and who's going to be in that path. So as we look at our next screen, we're going to see that this storm is going to move further out into the open Atlantic. What is the problem with that? The Atlantic, it's hot. It's got warm water. This is exactly what hurricanes need to fuel it, to get it to intensify, and that is what it's going to be moving over in the coming hours. So we're going to see by later on tonight, heading into tomorrow, the storm is going to be positioning itself over the Atlantic. It's going to continue its track there through the Atlantic until it gets toward the Florida area. By Saturday into Sunday, this storm is going to continue its strengthening until it becomes a major hurricane, which is Category 3 or more. All right, so here's what we're working with right now. This is going to be Wednesday, 8 o'clock in the evening, still a Category 1 storm. Advancing it now onto Thursday, 8 p.m., 80 mile per hour winds. Now we get to Friday at 8 a.m. The winds are up to 85 miles per hour. By Saturday morning, it's a Category 2 storm. And then as we get to Sunday at 8 a.m., 115 mile per hour winds. That puts it up into the major hurricane category. So major hurricanes are Category 3 and above. So that's what we'll see. And as you can see, it does have Florida within its sights. This is what we call the cone of uncertainty. Anywhere within this cone is where we could see that storm make landfall, but it does have its sights right on Florida as a major hurricane making its way through there. So I want to also take a look at the GFS versus the Euro with these models and kind of show you the similarities and the differences that we're seeing within them. So here's one thing that we're looking at. The GFS has favored a lot putting this storm from Florida, once it makes its way into Florida, bringing it further along the eastern coast. So the Carolinas, even Georgia would be impacted by this, and it would be somewhat of a slow mover. The Euro also sends it there, but it also puts it a little bit further inland after briefly crossing over Florida altogether before it makes a turn to the north. So here's what we're looking at. All right, so I'm going to pause this for a second. And the dark purple here is the European, and the maroon color is the Euro. Both of them are favoring bringing this storm to Florida as a major hurricane by, let's say, overnight Sunday into early Monday morning. Now, advance the clock here up through Monday. You can see it's still mainly over Florida. The Euro is favoring bringing it to the Gulf side and intensifying it a bit before it hooks it back up to the north. Melissa has been looking over it, and she's like, this has got to be error. It can't come back over here this far in a forecasting error, not error on our half. But the Gulf waters, I never trust a storm going into the Gulf. Myself being from the Louisiana area, the Gulf is very warm now. It's warmer than parts of the Atlantic. It is very warm, and those very warm waters, especially if that goes deep down, if it goes above the surface, that can lead, one of the factors rather, that can lead to some intensification. So we'd have to watch how this plays out from there. And we still have some time. There's definitely some wiggle room between now and late Sunday heading into Monday. So this is what we're looking at. Once you get into Monday heading into Tuesday, you can see where they both kind of agree to bring it a little bit further over out toward land and then didn't impacting the Georgia and the Carolina areas. So this is certainly something to watch. This is going to be our first major hurricane of the season, and just things to keep in mind that this is not just about storm surge, not just about the winds rather, but it's also about storm surge. It's also about heavy rain and even some isolated tornadoes that can be impacting it as well. So this is what we're looking at when it comes to these types of storms. So I'm going to hop on here. I want to take a few of your questions that you all may have and answer them for you. On another note, while I've got your attention, I want to talk to you about some storms that are heading in our area right now. So let's go ahead and look at that as well. I'll take your hurricane questions and also questions about the storms that are about to impact our area for your evening commute. So we've been watching these storms hold together on radar. A cold front is passing across the area. So the storms have been holding in. That is what we're looking at making its way in during your evening commute. So we haven't seen any warnings just yet, but it's been enough that you've got some areas of really heavy rain that have been falling across the area. This is what we see right now across Leesburg, Frederick, even through Hagerstown. We've had some stronger storms make their way in. Again, not spotting any watches or any warnings just yet on these storms, but they are packing some lightning in some areas of really heavy rain. So let's go in, see where they are, track these for you, and then also take your questions about the tropics. All right, so this is what we've got right now. This is around Myersville, Brunswick, Leesburg, all picking up on some moderate to heavier rain. I'm going to zoom in on this storm right here as it makes its way through the Luckett's and the Lovettsville area. And let's just do some quick tracking on this one to show you where it's going to be heading next. All right, so if we move this out from Leesburg, we can see it's pushing toward the Poolsville, the Dawsonville, the Darnestown area. So perhaps in Middlebrook by around 3:58 and maybe Germantown by 3:51, Darnestown by maybe 3:45. So this storm just packing some heavy rain is going to be pushing its way over there. And I'm going to go to a few more spots and track that as well, and then also take your questions. So if you're just joining us, the latest update is that Dorian has become a hurricane. And we're also looking at some storms pushing into our area. That's the two main things, the two main reasons why we are on Facebook Live right now. We're starting to see that heavy rain around the Leesburg area. We've got it also around Luckett's. We can see it around Myersville, Brunswick, Thurmont. This is going to be pushing into Tuscarora soon, and then eventually pushing into Montgomery County near 270. So I'm going to go to another spot. This is Brunswick. Let's zoom in here. So we've got Brunswick here, Petersville, Lovett, Lander, Jefferson. These are all the areas where we're seeing this. And now I'm going to just do some quick tracking over to the east. So this could be across the 270 area by perhaps Tuscarora Elementary School by maybe 3:22, Valley Elementary School by maybe 3 o'clock, Petersville by 2:46, and Hope Hill by maybe 3:32. So these are all the spots that we could see these storms make their way in next. The two big stories, we have a hurricane in the Atlantic right outside of Puerto Rico, well, actually on the eastern edge of Puerto Rico. And also we have some storms that are pushing into our area. Again, these don't look severe right now, but they are packing some heavy rain. So that's some tracking. They're going to be moving across DC Metro. It's 2:46 now. I would say around 3:30. 4 o'clock or so, if not a bit sooner, they will be in the metro during that evening commute. So expect some areas of heavy rain. These should not last us long. Once we get past, say, 7-ish or so, this should be done. And this is all a result of a cold front pushing in, helping to fire off these showers and storms. All right, back to the main story, and then I want to take your questions about Dorian and any other questions that you may have regarding our weather. So if you're on here, I'm going to be taking your questions right now. Let's just go back and get back over to our Dorian section, and we'll get you guys up to speed, and then we are going to get prepped for our next show coming on at 5. All right. Any questions out there about Dorian? I see some comments have come across. Okay, yeah, Fran, we do have some rain out there. Kathy, yes, we do have to get ready for it. Anybody else out there? Ella, thank you for offering prayers up to everyone. Greg, as far as them reaching Washington, D.C., that's a good question. A lot of them, what happens is they don't maintain that hurricane status as they make their way here. Most of those storms that make their way further north around Maine, they're mostly what we called fish storms. They're in the ocean, but not necessarily over land. So by the time they get closer to this area, they have lost their tropical features and are just storms. So we don't get many to actually slam into this area as actual full strength hurricane. Sarah, you're asking about the Bahamas. The Bahamas is within that cone of uncertainty. And while I know Florida is the main aim, let's go back over that track once more. Here's the current status with Hurricane Dorian. You can see it now just across the eastern edge of Puerto Rico area has seen the bulk of the heavy rain, but there have been a few bands that have made it far over to the west side. But this is what we're seeing right now. And you're asking about the Bahamas. I'm going to go and put the tracking back on and show you what that looks like right now. So here's the next track that we're going to see out of this storm coming over the Atlantic. And by, I would say, Saturday, it goes outside of Turks and Caicos. I think they'd probably be safe, but just north of the Bahamas, I should say. Well, you got Freeport, that's included. 8 a.m. Saturday, that's taking slightly a more northerly shift of the Bahamas, but enough to, I think, give you some big swells down there. And if you're going to be around the Freeport area, certainly you'd be looking at more of an impact from this particular storm, especially late Saturday heading into Sunday. And then the biggest impact comes to Florida as this begins to make landfall late Sunday heading into Monday. Any other questions out there? Pouring in Leesburg. Yes, Patrick, we do have some storms over us as well. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and get back to our local weather. Just wanted to update people who are just joining us about the very latest that we have on Hurricane Dorian. This is going to be our first major hurricane of the season making its way in. All right, let me get to a few more questions. So Sarah, that was this track around the Bahamas. I think you're still going to get some rain. Those outer rain bands will be stretching quite far. So you can see Nassau it's kind of just on the cusp of that. Of the hurricane as you get into Saturday into Sunday. I don't know if you're traveling there anytime soon. Noel, is it coming over the D.C. area? At this particular point in time, as a hurricane, it's not going to make its way over the D.C. area. I think that once it makes its way toward Florida and then heads toward Georgia and the Carolinas, it will eventually begin to start to curve out to sea. So, you know, we're still far out in terms of the D.C. impacts. The main impact first is going to be obviously right now Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and then Florida, even maybe parts of the Bahamas, and then Georgia and the Carolinas would be the next spots that we'd be looking at. Let me show you a few more models that I'm looking at when it comes to forecasting out in terms of even further than this. Kellen, you wanted about Fredericksburg. What area of Florida can be impacted, Angie? So here's the impact area of Florida. It really could be anywhere from up from Fort Pierce to Palm Beach, all the way up to Daytona Beach. And we say that because all these areas are within the cone of uncertainty. So it can jog within anywhere in those areas and make landfall. So pretty much that whole southern and eastern half of Florida, most of the state of Florida actually is within that cone. Nice Field, you're asking how bad is Florida expected to get hit? It could be a Category 3 storm when it makes landfall into Florida late Sunday into Monday. Fort Lauderdale timeline, this is Fort Lauderdale right here. So it would be somewhere between late Sunday and early Monday morning. That timeline could change. But that's what we're looking at for now. Jack, you're saying you think if the high pressure gets too weak, it could potentially come up the coast. Well, it is already slated to come along the Georgia area and through the Carolinas, but I think the high would hold it for now, for our area. Isabel probably would have been the one closest to the D.C. metro, Greg. Stephanie, I don't see it moving to New Orleans. What I do see is it briefly going into the Gulf. The Euro has it doing that before shifting it back further north. Thank you, Rosalinda. It is good to keep. This weekend, Dorian is mainly still going to be around the Florida area. I would maybe watch out for higher rips, rip currents rather, and higher waves. But the Outer Banks, I could still see Sunday being a bigger impact day, if any, heading into Monday versus Friday, Saturday, for those of you who are going there. Did someone have a question regarding... I answered. Okay, let me go back up. Make sure we get everyone's questions addressed. Noel answered yours. No, we don't see it coming over DC right now. There could be, it may increase our rain chances maybe next week, but not as a hurricane. And at that point, we're thinking it will be further out to sea. So in terms of the DC impact from this, I would say maybe a slightly increased rain chance, but not necessarily a direct hit, as in we're going to get slammed and so forth. So that's what I'm looking at there. Let me show you guys a few more things that I'm looking at. And I do want to get back to our local weather as well for those of you who had questions about that. Okay, Nicole, you South Carolina. Sure. So let me go back. Nicole is asking about, let me answer Amanda and Nicole's question. So Nicole Brunson, you want to know about Sumter, South Carolina, and could that be affected? So the Carolinas, once this storm passes Florida, it is expected to curve further along the coastlines of Georgia and the Carolinas. So you're likely going to get some showers and storms. The key to watch is that as it weakens, the motion of it, how fast it's going to be moving. If it's going to be stalling, like one of our models is thinking, then that could be an issue. Let me show you one other model, guys. I want to show you this European model. This is going to be for the next few days. It's going to go a little bit further out. So just let this load. I'm going to show you guys this. Beth Topper has the evening off. Melissa is in and she'll be on at 5. Port St. Lucie, Florida, Monica, that would still be in the path of the storm. Definitely. Tanya, you're very welcome anytime. Amanda, you asked about Washington, D.C. getting rain from Dorian. If anything, I think it would increase the rain chances. I don't think that it's going to necessarily be a direct hit. All right, so this is Saturday evening at 6:30. Right around, you can see just outside of Florida, there's already some rain. Now let me just move this in a little bit more. This is going to be, the Euros actually brought it more toward the southern tip of Florida, briefly into the Gulf, and then it churns it back up north. Wow, the Euro has A, making it move quite slowly, and B, it brings it further up north. So these are some of the differences. This is the European model. We're going to also look at the GFS model in just a second. But this is what I have for the European model in terms of the path of this storm. So that would send it a little bit further up to the western panhandle of Florida. Ah, interesting there in our tropical Euro. Okay. Let's look back at, let's do some spaghetti models here. Let's take a look at those for the next few days. All right, so this will load up. I'm going to show you guys just a couple models that I'm looking at. Oh, Monica, you're welcome as well. Nicole, you're welcome anytime. Kevin Marshall, a lot of people asking about the Baltimore area and impacting the D.C. area. I don't see a major impact from this for our area just yet, and we're still far out. But here's what I'm thinking. By next Thursday or so, we could see it helping to increase our rain chances, but I think at that point it would still be much further offshore and weakened at that point. All right, so this is just a look at a couple of the spaghetti models. Let me just go back here just a sec. All right, that one's not loading. Sorry about that, guys. Let me go back over to this one. Okay, so here's the one I want to show you guys. All right, we're just clicking back over here. You're not seeing anything in Puerto Rico? Dawn, let me answer one more question. I'm going to get back over to you because we are seeing... Oh, no, Sherry, not good for Disney World. Yes, Judith, the Virgin Islands are taking the brunt of this storm right now. It started off as the tropical storm there earlier today, and now it has advanced to a Category 1 hurricane. So let's just show you this. People were asking about the U.S. versus the D.C. impacts from this storm. So this is going to be Monday at 3 a.m. Both models agreeing to, and the Euro even more so agrees on intensifying it. Look at that purple. That's the Euro. This right here. This is the European model. See that? Now watch those lines inside. You see how tightly packed those lines are? That's an indication of a very strong and a very low pressure. So a strengthening storm has it, as we know it is, but the Euro has a strengthening even more. Now, as I move the timeline out, Euro's in purple, GFS is in the maroon color. It's going to keep them both pretty much going into Florida, but then the Euro goes over the Gulf, the GFS brings it over land. Interesting, and then brings it back up along the western edge of Florida toward Pensacola. Let's hope that scenario doesn't play out, because the last thing we want is for this storm to get into the Gulf. I can tell you the Gulf of Mexico right now is very hot. It is well past what a hurricane would need to strengthen. I think water temperatures are somewhere around 86, and all you need is for it to be about 80 to get that storm going. So it's surpassed it. And another thing we look at is how deep down does that water go? How deep down does that warmer water go? And it's at a sufficient enough depth, those 80+ degree temperatures down, to get this storm to intensify. So that's something that we have to watch. Let me go back over the radar right now and show you guys what that looks like, because some people are saying that your sister lives in Vero Beach now. Vero Beach, she's in Vero Beach, Florida. That area has to be on alert. Is the Euro more accurate or the GFS? We do have a revamped GFS that we are working with. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the Euro is so much better than the GFS. Both of them are going to have their errors at times, but in the past, the Euro has been quite a reliable model to look at. And the GFS, at some point, the two of them begin to come to an agreement. But this far out, there are still lots of variables at play. All right, I want to quickly do a recap, and then I also want to talk about our local weather really quickly. So what we have now is Hurricane Dorian. This storm is packing 75-mile-per-hour winds. Gusts are up to 90 miles per hour. It's moving to the northwest at about 13 miles per hour. Currently, taking the brunt of this storm is going to be the U.S. Virgin Islands, and you can also see parts of Puerto Rico. The center of the storm is not quite over the mainland Puerto Rico. You can see other islands just that are associated with Puerto Rico, along with the U.S. Virgin Islands and the British Islands, have seen the bulk of the rain from this particular system. You can see the storm is spinning, and its track has been to come up, and it's drifting just so to the northwest. That is where it's drifting. It's going to continue to drift there out into the Atlantic. Looking at the track of it once again, here's what's going to happen in the next few days that we will be watching very carefully. So by later on tonight, it's going to continue that northwest track. And it's going to get out into the Atlantic, where it's not going to have much of anything to bother it. It's not going to have a lot of wind. It's going to have warm water. Low wind shear, hot water. Those things help to get these storms going and helps to get them intensifying. So by Friday, the winds it's still a Category 1 storm, but the winds are now up to 85 miles per hour. Now I advance it to Sunday, and at this point, by Sunday morning, we're expecting this to be a major hurricane, which is Category 3 or higher. You can see that if you do have plans along Florida, even the Bahamas, I would still watch out for, because you're definitely going to get some of the rain and some of the wind associated with this. But by Sunday, Florida is going to be getting closer and closer to the path of this storm. And then late Sunday, heading into Monday morning, is when we are anticipating the most impact from Florida out of this system. There's still a bit of disagreement on exactly once it hits Florida, where does it go from there? Because the Euro takes it on a slightly different path than the GFS, which I just showed you guys a few moments ago. A lot of you have been asking me about the DC impacts. By the time this storm, it will continue to trek up to the north. We do know that. But by the time it gets closer to the D.C. area, my thoughts are that it's going to be a little bit further out to sea, and it will have weakened substantially at that point. So we're not going to see a Category 3 storm make its way over D.C. From here to there, that's just not going to happen, especially once it starts brushing across land and weakening. So I would not say that's the case. Could it aid, though? Could some of those, the distant rain bands, help aid in sending some moisture our way and therefore increasing our rain chances? Sure, I can see that, but I don't see obviously the same impact as it's going to have in Florida. All right, so that's what we're looking at in terms of this. Now, I do want to quickly get your attention over to our local weather really quickly and answer some more. Oh, sure. Nicefield. Well, thank you for that. All right. Nelson Jordan, sure. Quickly through Florida. I don't think it's going to be a fast brush. It's going to move across there. If the euro is right, it would cross across the entire state and make its way into the Gulf, which I don't want to see happen at all. Would not like to see this storm going. I never trust a storm in the Gulf. I don't like it. So let's hope that that's not the case. As I mentioned, the Gulf is hot right now. There's lots of warm water for it to work with. And when you have things like that and you don't have a lot of wind to bother it, it can lead to that, the intensification that you don't want. So we'd have to watch this very carefully. And there's still some wiggle room. The forecast that you're hearing now, continue to check back with us. There are going to be updates. In fact, we're probably going to get another one in about 2 hours at 5 o'clock. It may show, you know, a different wind speeds at this time. So the Hurricane Center is going to be monitoring this quite often for impacts. All right. A few more questions. You said, Nelson, I answered yours. Is it going to move slowly through Florida? Greg, you wanted to know about a near perfect indicator. You know, anything 5 days out for hurricanes is really pushing it. For hurricanes, we find that 5 days, you know, out is still kind of pushing it. You have a good general idea, but really 2 days in, a day in is when we have our best data, because, you know, you got to understand about these hurricanes, they're not some kind of thing you can put in a box. It is free and it gets over there, and there are some factors, the slightest thing, it takes just the right path over the warmest water with the least wind shear, and it can intensify rapidly even more. Hurricane Michael, we saw that particular hurricane intensify. They actually had to go back and upgrade it from a Category 4 to a Category 5. And it was just on the narrow, it was on a narrow path, but it was the perfect narrow path for intensification. And that's something that happened, sort of that rapid intensification at the last minute. So these storms are not on any particular type of GPS. They're not on any particular time scale. They're not on your time. They are on storm time. So the closer we get, the more data we can get, the more models we can get to weigh in. That is when we get our better data. There are some models that only go out a day or two. So when the closer you are to it, now you have more models at the table who can give you a better grip and an idea of what's going to be happening with that path of a storm. Sorry, Greg, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there. I just wanted to kind of get you to understand what we as forecasters are dealing with and why we don't like to go too far out when it comes to these hurricanes, because the closer you get, the better the data is to it. Okay. Oh, 2040, 2100. I still think your best data is going to be right as you are closer to it. You know, you might get some better ideas, but I think the closer you are to it, that's always going to be the rule with weather. The closer you are to the event, the better data you're going to get. Liken it to having a baby and you're trying to guess the due date. Well, the closer you are, the better, you know, idea you have of when you're going to go into labor. That's just kind of how I liking it. Stephanie, you wanted to know where the euro was tracking it. I can look back on the euro for you. Sorry, guys, I got caught up in some questions there. All right. Waldorf, Maryland, Nicefield. No, we're not looking at a lot of rain this weekend. On Sunday, perhaps an isolated shower, but Friday and Saturday to start look rather dry. Oh, Greg. Okay, great, great. All right. Any more? I got some more questions, guys. I want to make sure I'm getting to everybody here. Oh, nice. It's not a problem at all. Uh-oh. Who wrote that? It's not a problem at all. Not a problem. Okay. Did I miss any questions, guys? I want to make sure I got that to you. All right. So I just want to do a quick recap. And I also want to... I want to look at one more model with you guys and answer a few more questions. All right, so recap, if you're just joining us right now, We have ourselves a hurricane. Dorian became a hurricane in the 2 o'clock update. Here, let's get you guys on current radar right now and just show you what's happening with this. And we're also going to, oh, Greg, thanks. I appreciate you. Ron Watkins, hey, thank you. Welcome to you. Thanks for joining us. Oh, nice. You're very welcome, my friend. Anytime. Happy to help you all out. I'm going to recap, guys, take a few more of your questions, and then I'm going to clear here to let Melissa finish forecasting. Really quickly, if you're just joining us right now, we have ourselves a hurricane. We have Hurricane Dorian. It's a Category 1 storm, packing 75-mile-per-hour winds with gusts up to 90 miles per hour. This storm is moving up to the northwest at 13 miles per hour. Who is in the path of this storm? What are our key points? The key points are that this storm is currently impacting Puerto Rico, mainly the eastern edge of Puerto Rico, though all across the island we've seen some of the weaker bands. But if you can see, the center of that storm is really around the smaller islands that are a part of Puerto Rico, but not on the main island, and also around the U.S. Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands. Here is where we're dealing with the bulk of the impacts at this current moment from this particular storm. What we're looking at in the future is that this storm is going to be pushing its way out into the Atlantic, encountering some very warm water, encountering good atmospheric conditions to strengthen. And this is going to be our first major hurricane of the season. Let's talk about that timeline, who's in the pack, and then also go over the potential DC impacts, which will be minimal compared to what's going to be happening in Florida. All right, so here's what we've got. This is Friday. We're now up to 85 miles per hour with the winds. Once we get to Saturday, it becomes a Category 2 storm. Now the winds are up to 105 miles per hour. By Sunday, we will have what looks like going to be a major hurricane, Category 3 hurricane with winds up to 115 miles per hour. Florida is in the path of this storm. Both the GFS and the Euro, the typical models that we use for this, are moving this storm into Florida. What happens once it gets to Florida is where the GFS and the Euro begin to differ, and I'm going to go over that next in just a moment. So this is Sunday, and then as you head into Monday, you can see that cone of uncertainty. Almost the entire state of Florida is within that cone. That's what we continue to see there. So this is something that we definitely want to keep a close eye on. And then I want to talk to you all about what happens once it gets to Florida, because I know you're also interested in if it could have any impacts on us. So here you're going to see side-by-side model comparisons of the GFS versus the Euro. In the darker purple color is the European, and the maroon-like color is the GFS. This is Monday, early Monday morning at 3 a.m. The Euro looks even a bit more intense with those tightly packed lines, so strong, even stronger winds there. But what we're looking at is Florida is in the path of this storm. The Euro brings it closer towards South Florida. The GFS has it more toward central to the northeastern edge of Florida. Nonetheless, we know the state of Florida is starting to obviously get prepared for what is going to be a strong storm coming in. Now, this is what happens later Monday heading into Tuesday. You see both of the storms bringing it a little bit further to the west, excuse me. But what happens is the Euro is taking this storm over the Gulf, and it's continuing to intensify it, and then brings it up through the eastern edge of Florida. So then this storm would have essentially ran through all of Florida, even through to the eastern, to the western panhandle. It brings it up through toward Pensacola and Tallahassee. The Euro does. The GFS favors it came off in this one, but what it does is favors it more hugging toward the Georgia and the Carolinas, which eventually the Euro does bring it a little bit further back over to the east, but it really favors it going a little further out west before it brings it over there in line with the GFS. So we do have a lot to watch here, and we have to have our guards on high when it comes to this type of storm. Let me go ahead and take a few more questions from you guys. Does the model, I think I got another question from Lati. Sure. Does the GFS model have Dorian hitting the Outer Banks hard enough for evacuation when it gets there Sunday after Sunday and after Sunday? Oh, you're talking about this Sunday coming up and after. So what the GFS has, let me go back to that. Let me go to my GFS tropical model. I'll show you what that looks like. This is Not 10 p.m. Let me go out a little bit further on the GFS to answer your question even more. It would be up to the state officials to decide if they need to evacuate. I know going over some of the water would help to, going over some of the land would slow it down, so it wouldn't still be a Category 3 hurricane by the time it gets toward the Carolinas. But still, obviously, it would cause some impacts with the heavy rains, with the threat for flooding. So let's just get you, let's do the GFS. Let me get you guys the GFS. Oh, you said you saw that? Okay. Okay. You just saw my update. Okay. All right. I can still look at the other one for you if you want. Oh no, Greg, you're fine. Lati, okay. Glad we got your question answered. All right, you guys. Let me make sure I got to everyone. Larry Swan, thank you. All right, hang on one second, Greg. That's the way low pressure circulates. High pressure circulates clockwise, low pressure circulates counterclockwise. All right, anybody else? Yeah, that's the way low pressure circulates. It always will circulate counterclockwise, and high pressure circulates clockwise, unless you're in the southern hemisphere where it's the opposite. Do I have any other questions? All right, just want to make sure I'm getting through here. Oh, Thomas, that's very nice of you. All right, anyone else? Brittany Barrows, you were asking about Fort Myers. So Fort Myers, I would say all of Florida, essentially, Brittany, if you didn't see my other update, is within the cone of uncertainty. So anywhere within Florida could be impacted. Honestly, with the euro, I'm hoping it trends back off of this because like I've been telling you guys, the last thing I want to see is this storm going into the Gulf. That is not what I want to see happening with this. So let's look at, I want to look at one other item here. Let's just load this up really quickly. Look at the spaghetti models on it, because the euro, let me see how many other models are taking it to that path as well, if it's just that one. Brittany, yes. Fort Myers, as I mentioned, Brittany, just a moment ago, I think someone else asked about Fort Myers. Most of all of, of Florida is going to be within the cone of uncertainty with the storm. So Sunday, Fort Myers, yes, I would definitely prep in that particular area as well. Kevin, you want to know why they travel from east to west? They originate within, usually within the tropics, and they're just steered by whatever synoptic features are in place. What hurricanes are trying to do when they're moving from toward like the equator and further up north, they're trying to redistribute excess heat that builds up near the equator. They're trying to redistribute that further up to the north. The atmosphere is always trying to stay in balance. All right, guys, really quickly, just want to talk to you once again about the track of Dorian, and we're looking at what's called the spaghetti models. It's all the models we put out here. So this is Monday by 3 p.m. Most of those models, as you can see, I want to show you this really quick, so I want to talk to you about that, the track going after here, sends it through Florida. So from northern Florida, central Florida, I don't see the storm going directly as a main hit through Miami, but it's going to be close enough to that area that it needs to be on notice. So you can see all the models bring it through there. Now, a couple of them, more to my liking, are bringing it all the way across Florida and then back into the Gulf. That's a trend that we're going to have to watch really, really carefully. So we don't want this to go across the Gulf. You need to switch something?
You want to see a live picture?
Yes, let's look at a live picture. Melissa's pulling up a live picture for us, guys. We were looking at the spaghettis. Look, Melissa, they're more bringing it, trying to bring it over there. I don't like it. I don't like that at all. Melissa's going to pull us up a live picture, guys. Mary, you want to know about Ocean City, Maryland.
REM 27.
Hang on. The path again, Beth? Sure, I'll show that. 1 second. Melissa's just going to show us a live picture. Is it coming up? No?
Hold on.
No, you're fine. We're trying to get you a live picture, folks. And then once we do, we'll show you. Uh-oh. Let me put this back. That's okay. I'll put the path up until you, when you have it, just let me know.
Why is this,
All right, folks. So we're going to try to get you a live picture.
Yeah.
But
it's not going to work.
all right. Well, we were trying to get you a live picture. Beth asked about the path, and then we had a question about Ocean City, Maryland. So we're going to answer both of those. All right, so here's the path coming up again, okay? Because we did have a question asking for the path. And then Mary, for Ocean City, Maryland, I'm thinking by the time this storm begins to weaken and move further north, I think it's going to move a little bit further out to sea. And I'm going to look at warmer model as well. But my thoughts are that we're obviously not going to see the same impact as Florida. We would not have a major hurricane in our backyards. It'd be much, much weaker by then, if even holding on to any tropical status. All right, so I'm going to show this track, and then I'm also going to show you guys another output, a longer term output as well. Okay, so the track once again, this is tonight, 8 o'clock, 75 mile per hour winds. Thursday, 8 a.m., it strengthened, it remains a category 1 with 75 mile per hour winds. By Friday, a little bit stronger. 8 a.m., 85 mile per hour winds. It's moving over warm waters, and there's not much wind shear that's going to be disturbing it. Okay? And so then you get to Saturday, it's a category 2 storm. And then you get to Saturday and Sunday night, Sunday morning rather, excuse me, into Sunday night. It's a major hurricane at this point, category 3 storm, with winds up to 115 miles per hour. Here's the cone of uncertainty. So here's all your Florida: Fort Pierce, Palm Beach, Melbourne, Orlando, Daytona Beach, St. Augustine, Gainesville, Tampa, Miami. All of it is within the cone of uncertainty by early Monday morning. All right. So essentially all of central, southern, and eastern Florida is in the cone of uncertainty on Sunday, which means everybody pretty much in those areas needs to be on alert for this particular system. Charles, so these are all the areas that are included in here. Even Charles, I would say the western panhandle may want to be on alert as well, because there is some indication that this storm could potentially go into the Gulf a bit and before it churns its way back up to the north. Lati, you were asking about local weather for today. There are a few storms out there strong. I haven't seen any warnings on those. Lati is asking about the local weather, guys. So I'm just going to click over to that radar really quick and just show local weather really quickly, because we do have a question about the local weather. So we have a cold front that's pushing through the area right now, and that is sparking off some showers and storms. It's been relatively quiet in D.C., but a few storms have popped up to the west of D.C., including in the Leesburg area, and they are pushing over to the east. So we're thinking that for the evening commute, we're going to see a few more storms, but so far we haven't seen any warnings on these storms. This is what we've got right now. They are producing some heavy rain for us. We're going to take a look at those, and I'll take your questions on the local storms as well. So this is what we have right now. Still no warnings, but you know, these are not the weakest storms. Take a look at this. There's some heavy rain now pushing toward the Germantown area, Fairfax and Rockville. Let's go ahead and time these out for you. I'm going to backtrack on Dorian as well, but I do just want to, okay, there's a marine warning along the waterways, but not overland. All right, so let's just go ahead and track this for you. I want to show you where this is going to be heading next. So here's what we're looking at. There are some storms pushing through our area right now. So far, they are not severe, but they are packing some heavier rain. And this is what we have in terms of the track of them. They're over Fairfax now, approaching 66, and even through the Reston area. Here's where they're going to be heading next. So from Fairfax, expecting them to be in D.C. Perhaps within the next hour or less. Nats Park, this has 4:31. It could be even sooner than that. Annandale by the next 20 minutes or so. Falls Church in the next 20 minutes or so. So that's what we have right now. Bailey's Crossroads, Braddock by 4:18. So in less than an hour, you're going to see these storms pushing across the area. So you got about an hour or less before these storms begin to make their way into the city of D.C. Let's go to a few more spots and track these storms. Here's a storm coming out of Manassas heading toward the Lorton area. Let's track that for you and show you where it's headed next. All right, so if you're around Lorton, I would say right around 4 o'clock or so, and then around the Mount Vernon area by around 4:30, and right around 4:40 around Fort Hunt, Lake Ridge at the end of the hour, right around 3:50 or so. I'm going to track a few more spots, show you guys where these storms are heading next in terms of our local weather, and then we'll get back over to Puerto Rico. And then I have to turn this over to Melissa so she can finish her forecast and give you a good update at 5. All right, let's talk about Quantico and Dale City when these storms will be hitting those areas. All right, so Dale City by around 4 o'clock or so, and Canova by in the next few minutes, 10 minutes or so. All right. Quantico by 4:30, or a little bit earlier. Garrisonville by 4 o'clock. Looks like Ruby by about 3:40 or so. All right, so local weather is here as well. Haven't seen anything severe yet, but there are some storms that'll impact your evening commute. It looks like right around the 4 o'clock hour will be a little bit more active around the D.C. metro area, but so far none of them have turned severe. There's a cold front pushing in. That is helping to trigger off some showers and storms. All right, so there's a storm now over Potomac. It's about to, and over Reston. This is about to push into the McLean area, and then pretty soon this is going to be crossing 270. So let's just track this for you really quick. Greg, yes, we are in the Tinleytown area. All right, so this storms will be around the Wheaton area at around 4 o'clock or so, maybe 4:10. Vansville by 4:46, Montgomery Mall and North Bethesda by around 3:50, if not a bit earlier. So these are going to be getting ready. Chevy Chase by around 4 o'clock. So storms are knocking at our doorsteps if you're in D.C. and haven't seen them yet. Germantown and Gaithersburg are getting some of the heaviest rain associated with these storms right now. And let's do some tracking for the Damascus area.